When my daughter Emily died in my arms at the age of 38, I never imagined the real pain would begin at her own funeral, when the man who abandoned her 10 years ago showed up in a black suit demanding the $29 million she had left to me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, tap the bell, new stories go up every day, leave a like, and tell us in the comments what U.S. city you're watching from. My name is Robert Miller. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 4 months I lived through the worst hell of my life, watching cancer slowly take my only child, Emily. She was everything to me after her mother died when Emily was only 12. I raised her alone. I worked day and night so she could have a great education, and I was proud when she became a successful entrepreneur with her own chain of fashion stores in New York and Chicago. On March 15, 2024, Emily called me to her hospital room at New York Presbyterian. Her eyes, once bright with determination, now held the calm of someone who knows the end is near. "Dad," she said in a weak but steady voice, "I need you to know something important. I've been preparing everything for you." She handed me a sealed envelope, documents that would change my life forever. When I opened it that night at home, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Emily had built a fortune of $29 million through her business and investments. In her will, drafted with Michael Carter, our trusted attorney, she named me her sole beneficiary. "Dad, you are both father and mother to me. No one else deserves what I worked so hard to build," she wrote in a personal letter that accompanied the papers. Emily died on March 22, 2024 at 6:47 a.m. I held her hand as she exhaled her last breath. In that moment, it felt like part of my soul left with her. The next days were a blur of grief, paperwork, and funeral arrangements. On March 25th, the day of the funeral, St. Patrick's Cathedral in Manhattan was filled with relatives, friends, and business partners. I sat in the front row, shattered, when a hand touched my shoulder. I turned and saw a tall man, about 42, in an immaculate black suit and tie, tears streaking his cheeks. "Robert," he said in a voice that cracked, "I'm Derek Ryan Sanders. I'm so sorry for the loss of our dear Emily." For a moment, I couldn't even process it. Our dear Emily. This man had the gall to show up after 10 years of total abandonment and talk like he'd been there for my daughter. Derek had been Emily's husband for just 2 years, from 2012 to 2014. When she told him she was pregnant in January 2014, he disappeared overnight, leaving her with marital debts and a pregnancy that tragically ended in miscarriage. I tried to keep my composure in that sacred place. "I came to say goodbye to the woman I loved," he said, dabbing his eyes with a white handkerchief. "Emily and I had our problems, but she was always special to me." What enraged me most was how he performed for the guests. He sat in the second row, right behind me, sobbing theatrically. People who didn't know the history tried to comfort him, assuming he was the heartbroken widower. He even approached the casket at the final farewell. He set his hand on the polished wood and murmured something I couldn't hear. After the church service, we went to Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. All along the way, Derek stayed close to the family, as if he had any right to be there. His behavior felt staged, calculated. It wasn't the raw grief of someone who'd lost a loved one. It was an act. When the casket was lowered, Derek came up to me again. "Robert, we need to talk after this. There are important things we should discuss about Emily and, well, about the future." Those words froze my blood. The future? What future could a man be talking about after abandoning my daughter at the worst moment of her life? I knew then Derek hadn't come just to say goodbye. He had a plan, and it wasn't going to honor Emily's memory or the peace I desperately needed in my grief. After the funeral, while guests headed to the reception at my sister Carol's home in Queens, Derek waited beside a black Mercedes. His demeanor had changed. The theatrical grief was gone. A calculating smile took its place. "Robert, time to speak plainly," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Emily was my wife legally, and under New York law, I have rights over her estate." I was stunned. Rights? This man thought he could show up after a decade of silence and claim what Emily built with sweat and sacrifice. "Derek, you and my daughter divorced in August 2014, I said, holding my temper even as fury boiled inside. "You have no rights to anything." "Ah, but that's where you're wrong, Dad-in-law," he smirked. "Turns out Emily didn't complete all the divorce filings correctly. Technically, we were still married in certain legal respects. My attorneys say I can claim at least half of that $29 million. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He'd been planning this, watching, waiting, like a vulture. "How dare you," I snapped, losing my calm for the first time. "You abandoned my daughter when she needed you most. You left her pregnant, in debt, and alone. Now, after 10 years, you show up talking about rights?" Derek flicked his cigarette to the ground and stared coldly. "Look, Robert, I get that you're hurt, but feelings don't change the law. Emily built that empire, sure, but when we were together, I contributed to the start of her business. It was a lie, and I knew it. Emily opened her first store in 2016, 2 years after the divorce, with a small business loan I helped her secure. Derek never contributed a single dollar to my daughter's dream. Listen closely," he said, his tone turning threatening. "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Give me my share voluntarily, say $15 million, and we avoid a long, ugly legal fight that will drag Emily's name through every tabloid in New York." There was Derek's real face, not just an opportunist, but a blackmailer willing to use my daughter's name to get money. "Are you threatening me?" I asked, stepping closer. "I'm offering a civilized solution," he said, "but if you want the press to run with greedy father denies widow her rights, I can make that happen." I remembered the day Derek abandoned Emily as clearly as if it were yesterday. January 28th, 2014. Emily called me at 11 p.m., sobbing, saying she'd come home to a note on the kitchen table. "I'm leaving. This isn't working. Don't try to contact me." That was it. Not even the courage to say goodbye face to face. Over the next weeks, Emily discovered Derek had emptied their joint account, taking $12,000 her savings for a future business. He left unpaid bills from their apartment too, forcing Emily to shoulder debts she didn't create. The worst came in March 2014 when Emily lost the baby. She tried to call Derek to tell him the tragedy, but he'd changed his number and blocked her everywhere. My daughter grieved a child and a marriage in the same breath. "You're right about one thing," I told him calmly. "This can go easy or hard. If you try to smear my daughter's name with lies, you'll learn what I'm capable of." Derek let out a sarcastic laugh. "Gonna scare me, Grandpa? I'm 42. You're 68. I have resources and contacts you couldn't imagine. My offer's on the table. $15 million now, or 20 after the trial, plus the legal fees it'll cost me to destroy your reputation." "Get out of here before I do something I'll regret," I warned. "You've got a week to think it over," he said, climbing into his Mercedes. "Next Monday you'll get legal papers. This is just getting started." Watching his car pull away, I felt a fierce mix of rage and resolve. He thought he could exploit a father's grief, but he picked the wrong man. Emily taught me to fight for what's right. That night, alone in my house, surrounded by photos of Emily from childhood to her final days, I made a decision. I would not give Derek a single cent. I would do everything possible to expose his true intentions in an American court. The day after meeting Derek, I began my own investigation. I wasn't going to sit and wait for his threats to land. If he'd planned this carefully, I needed to know what else he was hiding. My first stop was the office of Michael Carter, the attorney who drafted Emily's will. Michael, a 55-year-old with more than 20 years in estate law, saw me that morning at his Park Avenue office. "Robert, I'm so sorry for your loss," he said, reviewing Emily's documents. I want you to know your daughter's will is airtight. She was specific and fully competent when she signed. Michael, I need you to look into Derek Ryan Sanders, I said. He's claiming rights to Emily's estate, but I know he's lying. Michael took notes as I described the graveside conversation. Let me pull the divorce file, he said. If I remember right, Emily made sure every tie was severed. While Michael dug into the legal side, I reached out to Patricia James, Emily's personal assistant for the past 5 years. Patricia knew Emily's schedule and contacts better than anyone. We met that afternoon at a cafe near Emily's Midtown office. Normally steady and discreet, Patricia looked nervous. Mr. Miller, there's something I need to tell you about Derek, she said, glancing around as if afraid to be overheard. For the last 3 months he's been trying to reach Emily. Trying to reach her how? I asked, feeling my pulse climb. In December he used fake names, but I recognized his voice. Emily had warned me. She told me to hang up if he called again. Patricia kept going, and each detail chilled me. In January, Derek came to the office. Emily wasn't there. She had started chemo, but he insisted on talking to me. He asked about the company's finances, how many stores, whether Emily had partners or investors. What did you tell him? Nothing. He pressed anyway. He offered me $500 just to confirm that Emily was as successful as the paper said. I kicked him out. Later I heard he'd been asking the same questions at the bank where Emily kept her main accounts. My suspicions were confirmed. Derek didn't show up at the funeral by accident or love. He'd been planning, tracking Emily's finances while she fought cancer. Do you have proof of these contacts? I asked. Yes, Patricia said. Emily asked me to record office calls after Derek's first contact. I have the recordings on my personal laptop. Those words were music to my ears. If Derek admitted his intentions on those calls, we'd have solid evidence of his opportunism. The next day, Patricia brought me the audio on a USB. Listening at home, I felt a mix of shock and disgust. In a February 15th recording, Derek said clearly, Look, Patricia, I know Emily is sick. I just want to know if it's worth trying a reconciliation. You know what I mean. I'm not wasting time if she doesn't have anything to offer. In a March 8th call, he was even blunter. I've heard Emily has several million saved. If that's true, maybe we can fix the past. We all deserve a second chance, especially when there's that much money at stake. The most revealing recording was dated March 20th, 2 days before Emily died. Derek asked directly about the will. Do you know if Emily made a will? Because technically, if we're still married in some legal sense, I'd have automatic rights over her assets. Now I understood his plan. He'd monitored Emily's illness, waited for her death, then planned to arrive as the grieving husband to claim the inheritance. Cruel and calculated. That night, I got another critical lead from Andrew Monroe, a former co-worker with contacts in finance. Robert, Andrew said, I asked around about Derek Sanders. The guy's a financial wreck. He lost his consulting shop in 2022 on bad crypto bets. He also has gambling debts in Atlantic City and Las Vegas, over $80,000. Loan sharks are leaning on him. He's desperate. It all fit. Derek wasn't just an opportunist. He was cornered, and he'd bet his future on Emily's death. Armed with this, I called Michael to set an urgent meeting. We had compelling evidence of Derek's fraud, but we needed a legal strategy before he made good on his courtroom threat. Friday night, sorting documents and recordings, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered and recognized Derek instantly. Robert, I hope you've reconsidered. Monday I'll file in court. It'll cost you more. Last chance with $15 million and we all walk away happy. Derek, I said flatly, you should reconsider. I've learned a lot about your real intentions. Silence. Then, I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me. I have resources that can make your life very complicated. We'll see who holds the better hand, I said, and hung up. That night, for the first time since Emily's death, I slept peacefully. I knew the legal fight ahead would be intense, but I finally had the tools to defend my daughter's legacy and unmask this predator. On Monday, April 1st, 2024, Derek kept his word. At 9 a.m., a courier knocked on my door with an official envelope from New York County Surrogate's Court. Inside was a 47-page petition challenging Emily's will. Derek claimed not only the $29 million but also damages for alleged concealment of marital assets. His legal theory was twisted but carefully packaged. He alleged that during their marriage 2012-2014, they created a joint business collaboration that was never formally dissolved. He claimed Emily used his ideas and contacts to build her empire. He even listed witnesses to confirm his role. Names I didn't recognize. He'd prepped this con for a long time. I called Michael and rushed to his office. He sat reading, jaw set. "Robert, I won't lie. Derek hired Christopher Vance, an aggressive attorney who wins tough cases with technicalities and media pressure." "Meaning?" I asked, anxiety rising. "They'll play dirty. Vance leaks stories to create public pressure. We'll probably see tabloid pieces about a selfish father denying a grieving widower." Michael was right. The very next day, a sensationalist paper, the New York Ledger, ran a piece. "The $1 million battle over Emily Miller's estate, justice or greed." It parroted Derek's narrative that he was a successful consultant who sacrificed his career to support his wife, now unfairly excluded. There was even a photo of Derek at the funeral, captioned, "The pain of a husband seeking justice." While Michael prepared our response, I dug for more proof of Derek's true character. Patricia told me Emily kept her personal documents in a safe in her private office and had left me the combination for emergencies. In the safe, I found a trove. Meticulous divorce correspondence, including emails Derek sent in 2014 when he bailed. A February 15, 2014 email read, "Emily, you need to understand this isn't working. I'm not ready to be a father, and your obsession with opening a business is childish. I'm moving to Chicago to start over. Do not contact me." Another, dated March 3, 2014. "I emptied the joint account because I need that money to get established. Consider it compensation for the 2 years I lost in this marriage. I hope you can pay the apartment debts without dragging me in." The most valuable document was a notarized letter Emily wrote to her attorney in August 2014 during the divorce. In it, she detailed Derek's abandonment and manipulation. "My husband, Derek Ryan Sanders, left on January 28, 2014, after I told him I was pregnant. He emptied our joint account of $12,000, my personal savings. When I miscarried in March due to stress, he had blocked all contact. I formally request that our divorce decree reflect Derek's renunciation of any future rights to my assets and income." It had full legal effect. It proved Derek voluntarily waived any future claim to Emily's assets. Back at Michael's office, I laid the documents on his desk. His eyes lit up. "Robert, this is gold. The notarized waiver shows voluntary abandonment and an explicit renunciation of future rights. Any reasonable judge will toss Derek's claim. He warned me, though. Vance will try to discredit these. He'll say Emily was emotionally compromised or the circumstances changed. He'll argue Derek contributed something." To strengthen our case, Michael suggested we find witnesses who knew Derek during the marriage. I thought of Ellen Martin, Emily's best friend from college. She'd witnessed Emily's pain and Derek's abandonment. Ellen agreed to testify at once. "Mr. Miller, I was with Emily the night Derek left. I'll never forget how she cried. He can't show up now claiming rights he never earned. He belittled her business plans, called them a waste of time, even forbade her from using her savings to hire a business consultant." With these pieces, Michael drafted our response. Before filing, he took a strategic swing. We'll ask the court to compel Derek to produce documents proving his alleged contributions, contracts, invoices, investment records. We know he has none. Forcing him to try will expose the fraud." That night, reviewing everything again, I felt a heavy sadness, but also a clear purpose. Emily was extraordinary. She built her success despite betrayal. My job as her father was to guard her legacy from anyone who saw her death as a quick payday. While Michael worked, Patricia called with something that would change everything. She asked me to come by her Upper East Side apartment that Thursday night. "I have something explosive," she said. When I arrived, Patricia looked anxious but resolute. "Mr. Miller, after our last talk, I remembered something important. Emily didn't just ask me to record phone calls. After Derek's first in-person visit, she installed a recording system in her private office." Patricia opened her laptop to a folder full of audio files. "Emily was careful. She suspected he'd try something, so she recorded any future meetings." "There were more meetings?" I asked. "Yes, 2, which Emily never told anyone about, not even you. Derek visited her office on February 28th and again on March 14th, a week before she died." Patricia played the February 28th recording. Hearing Emily's voice, weak but steady, tied a knot in my chest. "Derek, what do you want after all these years? Emily, I know you're sick. I know you've had a lot of financial success. We don't have anything to fix, Derek. You abandoned me when I needed you most." I moved on. "Let's be practical," Derek said, sugary smooth. "You've built an empire. Nearly $30 million. I was your husband during 2 crucial years. Legally, I could claim a share, but I'd prefer a friendly agreement." Emily's reply was firm. "You have no right to what I built. You signed away any future claim when we divorced, and I built everything after you left." "Ah, that's where you're wrong," he said. "Specialists tell me some divorce papers have gaps that could benefit me, especially if you die without a clear will that excludes me." Those words were ice. Derek wasn't just planning to claim after Emily died. He was openly threatening her and waiting for her death. "Are you threatening me?" Emily asked, disbelieving. "Not a threat, just legal reality. But as I said, I prefer to settle this like adults. Give me, say, $5 million now, and I'll sign a waiver forever." "I will never give you a penny," she said. "If you try anything, I'll expose who you are and how you abandoned me while I was pregnant." "You're in no position to threaten anyone," he replied. "Your illness is serious. From what I've seen, you've only got a few months. Think about it. $5 million now, or legal problems for your family after you're gone." The recording ended with a door slamming. Patricia explained. Emily kicked him out, but he came back 2 weeks later for an even uglier conversation. The March 14th recording stripped away all pretense. "Emily, I've done more research on your finances. I underestimated. My contacts say you could have up to $35 million in properties, investments, cash. Derek, I don't know how you got that information, but it's wildly inappropriate for you to be probing my private finances. Let's be honest. You're going to die soon, and the money's going somewhere. Your father's an older man. He doesn't need that much. I'm 42 with a whole life ahead of me. We can make a deal that helps everyone." "A deal? Are you out of your mind?" "Listen," he said, voice low and hard. "I can make life very difficult for your family after you die. I have lawyers who can argue your divorce wasn't properly processed in key technical aspects. We can tie up your assets for years, ruin your family's reputation." "You're despicable," Emily said. "I can't believe I ever married you." "I'm realistic," he replied. "One last offer. You give me $15 million now, and I guarantee your father gets the rest without trouble. If you refuse, I'll fight for everything, and your family won't see a dollar without years of court." Emily's voice was tired but unshakable. "Hear me clearly, Derek. I will never give you anything. I revised my will specifically to exclude you, and I've documented all your threats. If you try anything after I'm gone, My family will have the evidence to show exactly what you are. We'll see, Emily. We'll see who has the last word. Patricia stopped the audio. After this second visit, she said, Emily told me to contact Michael immediately to update her will. She also told me to keep these recordings safe and give them to you if Derek ever made a legal move. Even in her final days, Emily was protecting me and her legacy. The recordings showed Derek's predatory intent, his threats, and his attempt to get confidential financial information. How did Derek learn about her finances? I asked. Patricia had an answer. A bank employee reached out discreetly. Derek tried to bribe a teller for details about Emily's accounts. The teller refused, but Derek kept pressing through February and March. Another crime to add, attempted bribery and illegal access to financial data. With this, our case wasn't just strong on the will challenge. We could pursue criminal charges. I called Michael that night. His reaction said it all. Robert, with this, we won't just win. The DA could charge him with threats, attempted extortion, fraud. Our strategy changes. We go on offense. For the first time since Emily died, I felt justice tilt our way. My daughter, even from the grave, had armed me to face the man who thought he could cash in on our pain. On May 15, 2024, the first surrogate's court hearing arrived. Michael and I got there early, hauling boxes of documents, recordings, and affidavits. I wore the same black suit I'd worn to Emily's funeral, feeling she was with me in that room. At 9:30 a.m., Derek entered with his attorney, Christopher Vance, and 3 people I didn't know. Derek wore a perfect gray suit and an expression of solemn victimhood. Judge Mary Caldwell, tough but fair, opened the session and explained the process. As petitioner, Derek's side would go first. Vance stood up, swaggering. Your Honor, my client, Derek Sanders, was a devoted husband during the formative years of Emily Miller's career. He provided emotional, intellectual, and logistical support that enabled her to develop the ideas that later brought her enormous success. He spun lie after lie. My client sacrificed his own opportunities to support his wife's business dreams. He suggested the concept of fashion stores that combined chic design with affordability. He introduced her to key contacts who became partners. I burned to respond, but Michael had warned me to stay calm. Vance then called his 3 witnesses. First, Raymond Simmons, claiming to be a business consultant who worked with Derek and Emily in 2013. Derek was the brain behind the strategy, he testified. Emily had the capital, but Derek designed the operations. Second, Carmen Stone, who said she'd been a commercial partner and backed Derek's supposed role. Third, Albert Reed, claiming he met Emily through Derek and invested in her first rounds. When they finished, Michael leaned in. They're lying. Their testimony is too coordinated. We'll rip this apart on cross. Our turn. Michael's opening move was brilliant. Your Honor, before we present argument, we'd like to play the petitioner's own words, recorded in meetings with the late Emily Miller during her final weeks. When the February 28th recording played, Derek's face drained. He whispered furiously to Vance. Emily's voice filled the courtroom. You signed a document renouncing any future claims when we divorced. Then, Derek's own words. Some of those divorce papers have gaps that could benefit me, especially if you die without a clear will that excludes me. You could feel the room shift. Judge Caldwell took rapid notes as Derek threatened Emily, exploiting her terminal illness. When the part played where he said, Your illness is serious. Think about it. $5 million now or legal problems for your family after you die. People exchanged looks of disgust. Michael paused the audio. Your Honor, as you can hear, the petitioner admits he has no legal rights and seeks to extort a dying woman. Vance jumped up. Objection. These recordings were made without my client's consent. Judge Caldwell was firm. Overruled. The recordings were made in the decedent's private office, and the petitioner was informed conversations there were recorded. Proceed. Michael played March 14th, where Derek said he could create many legal problems and tie up assets for years. Then, Michael presented the notarized 2014 letter where Emily memorialized Derek's abandonment and his waiver of future rights, and he submitted Emily's January 2024 will naming me as sole beneficiary. Next, Patricia James took the stand. Calm and clear, she testified that Derek repeatedly tried to bribe her and bank staff for confidential financial information, while Emily was fighting cancer. On cross-examination of Derek's witnesses, Michael dismantled them. When he asked Raymond Simmons for details on 2013 business meetings, Simmons couldn't produce addresses, dates, or documents. "Can you show a single invoice, contract, anything?" Michael asked. "They were lost in a move," Simmons stammered. "How convenient," Michael said dryly. Carmen Stone couldn't present any evidence either and knew nothing about retail specifics. At day's end, Judge Caldwell said she'd review the evidence and issue a decision within 15 days. Outside, Derek hissed, "This isn't over, Robert. I'll appeal forever. I can keep this going for years." "You should be more worried about criminal charges than inheritance," I replied. For the first time, he looked scared. Those 15 days were the longest of my life. Michael cautioned that even strong cases can get weird under pressure. While we waited, I dug deeper. My nephew Charles, an analyst at a private investigations firm, ran backgrounds on Derek's witnesses. "Uncle Robert, I found a lot," he said over dinner. "Raymond Simmons has a perjury record from a 2019 real estate fraud case in Miami. Carmen Stone is a part-time actress who's been paid to give false testimony before. She was fined $3,000 just last year in a divorce case. As for Albert Reed, he isn't licensed as an investor at all. He's a used car salesman fired for fraud." Derek had recruited people with tainted histories to lie under oath. I called Michael immediately. "We need this in front of the judge." "Perfect," he said. "We'll request a supplemental hearing on perjury. If we show Derek organized paid false testimony, he won't just lose. He'll face criminal exposure." On May 28th, 2 days before the scheduled ruling, Judge Caldwell agreed to hear our new evidence. The room was taut with tension. Derek and Vance arrived visibly rattled. Michael began, "Your Honor, the petitioner's first witness has a documented perjury history, fined by a Miami court in 2019 for false statements in a real estate fraud case." When he presented the file on Carmen Stone, the judge frowned. "This person has been paid for testimony in multiple cases," Michael said, holding invoices showing fees from $2,000 to $4,000. The knockout came when Michael proved Albert Reed had never held an investment license, and then produced bank records showing Derek paid all 3 witnesses in the weeks before their testimony. $8,000 to Simmons, $6,000 to Stone, $5,000 to Reed, exactly 10 days before court. The courtroom went silent. Judge Caldwell turned to Derek. "Mr. Sanders, can you explain these transfers to individuals who subsequently testified in your favor?" Derek stood, shaking. "Your Honor, personal loans. Unrelated." "Personal loans of those exact amounts to 3 people who just happened to testify for you?" she asked, ice in her voice. Vance tried to interject. "Your Honor, my client is entitled to the presumption of innocence." "Silence!" she snapped. "This court will not tolerate attempts to manipulate justice with purchased testimony. Mr. Sanders has presented false witnesses and orchestrated a deliberate perjury scheme." Then came the surprise. The judge ordered the immediate arrest of the 3 false witnesses for perjury and cited Derek for a separate criminal hearing on witness bribery and obstruction. "As to the main matter," she continued, "based on the evidence submitted by Robert Miller, this court finds Mr. Sanders's claim entirely unfounded and fraudulent." Her decision was unequivocal. The recordings show the petitioner knew he had no legal claim and sought to exploit the decedent's terminal illness. The decedent's will is valid. The 2014 notarized letter documents the petitioner's voluntary renunciation of all future claims. The petition is denied with prejudice. Robert Miller is confirmed as the sole and lawful beneficiary. The petitioner is ordered to pay all legal costs and fined $50,000 for presenting false testimony. She wasn't finished. This court further refers Mr. Sanders to the district attorney for investigation into threats, attempted extortion, witness bribery, and obstruction of justice. Bail conditions to be addressed immediately. Derek collapsed into his chair, colorless. For once, his attorney had nothing to say. Outside, reporters swarmed us. Michael read a short statement. Justice prevailed. Mr. Robert Miller has protected his daughter's legacy against a fraudulent claim. Emily Miller's memory remains intact, and her will has been fully respected. That afternoon, at home, I reread Emily's will for the 100th time. In one of the last clauses she had written, "Dad, I hope you never have to use this to defend yourself against unscrupulous people. But if you do, remember that I built this thinking of your future and in honor of Mom. Don't let anyone stain our family's legacy." For the first time since she died, I felt Emily could rest in peace. Her last battle had been won. What followed the ruling was a flood of revelations. People who'd been afraid to speak now reached out about Derek's schemes. First was Rose Fletcher, 45, who dated Derek from 2018 to 2020. She called on June 2nd, 3 days after the decision hit the news. "Mr. Miller, I've followed your case. Derek put me through hell, just like he did to your daughter." We met at a cafe in Midtown. Rose told a story that made my blood boil. Derek charmed her right after she inherited property from her father in Ohio. He seemed perfect, attentive, caring. Then she learned he'd researched her finances before approaching her. During their 2 years, he constantly pressured her to lend money for investments. When they split in 2020, she discovered he'd taken $35,000 from her account using information he'd coaxed from her. "Did you report it?" I asked. "I tried," she said, "but he threatened to ruin my career. I'm a marketing director, and he claimed to have friends who could make my life miserable. I decided the money was the price of getting free." She wasn't the only victim. A 58-year-old retired businessman, Anthony Rogers, met Derek at a poker club in 2021. "Mr. Miller, he's a financial predator," Anthony told me. "He posed as a successful investment advisor, talked me into putting $80,000 into a fund he ran." Anthony showed me documents. Derek had created a shell company, Sanders and Associates Investments, to scam older people with savings. When Anthony tried to withdraw money 6 months later, he discovered the company didn't exist. The money covered Derek's gambling debts. And yes," Anthony added, "he threatened me not to go to the police, said he had contacts who'd make trouble, and he had compromising photos from a meeting where I'd had too much to drink. Michael connected me with a private investigator, Louis Matthews, who specialized in financial fraud. Louis uncovered a decade-long pattern. Mr. Miller, he targets people in vulnerable transitions, new widows, recent divorcees, small business owners in crisis, older folks with savings. He seduces or befriends them to gain access, then drains them." Lewis documented at least 12 victims from 2014 to 2024, with combined losses over $400,000. The pattern was identical: seduction, manipulation, extraction, threats. Worse, Derek kept detailed files, photos, recordings, bank data to blackmail victims. With this, Michael and I went to the DA's office to expand the case. The assistant district attorney assigned, Robert Nolan, was very interested. "Gentlemen, this isn't just a fraudulent inheritance claim. It's a criminal operation running for a decade. With these testimonies and evidence, we can charge Derek Sanders with grand larceny, fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." The biggest shock came when Patricia called again after combing Emily's files. "Mr. Miller, I found something disturbing in Emily's call logs from late 2023. In November and December, Derek wasn't just calling her. He contacted vendors and clients of the stores, asking about the company's health. He introduced himself as a family consultant hired by Emily to evaluate the business. She showed me a list of 20-plus contacts he'd approached. Emily knew. That's why she hardened security and installed the recording system. She suspected Derek was building toward something big. It proved Derek had been planning to seize the estate for at least 6 months before Emily died. Not an impulsive move, but a long, predatory plan. On June 10th, Ada Nolan told us Derek had been formally charged with 10 criminal counts. Mr. Miller, thanks to your perseverance and these victims coming forward, we're going to prosecute this man for the full scope of his crimes. He's facing decades. That night, as I organized the case files, I realized Derek wasn't just an opportunistic ex. He was a professional criminal feeding on other people's pain. Without knowing it, Emily had become the victim who exposed his entire network. Her courage documenting his threats didn't just save our family. It ended a decade of crimes. Then, on June 18, 2024, just when it seemed everything was settled, I got a call that changed how I saw Emily's final days. It was from Hope Gray, a second cousin of Emily's who lives in Cleveland. Robert, I've been following the case in the news, and I think there's more you need to know about Emily's death, she said, voice trembling. Her words turned my blood cold. What do you mean, more? I'd rather tell you in person. Can you come to Cleveland this weekend? It's about Emily's last days in the hospital. The trip to Cleveland was agonizing. Hope is a 52-year-old oncology nurse. Though she didn't treat Emily, she has colleagues at New York Presbyterian. We met at her apartment Saturday morning. She held medical notes, her face grave. Robert, a colleague at the hospital, reached out after seeing the news. She's been uneasy since Emily died, but she was scared to speak up. She pulled the visitor logs. According to the records, Derek visited Emily 3 times in March, when you weren't there, March 5th, 12, and 19. That's impossible, I said. Emily expressly forbade Derek from visiting, and I practically lived at the hospital those last weeks. Exactly. That's why it's so strange, Hope said. He identified himself as her legal spouse and presented falsified documents to get in on night shifts. Hope's colleague reported that on March 19th, 3 days before Emily died, Derek stayed in the room over 2 hours. After he left, Emily was extremely agitated. Her vitals worsened. I'm not saying Hope began. I know, I said, unable to finish. But Emily asked the nurses that night not to allow Derek back. She said she was scared. She also said something about not letting him force her to sign anything. Hope handed me a copy of the nursing notes. Patient very agitated after family visit. Requests no further visits by husband. States concern about legal documents. Mild sedative administered. There's more, Hope said. Security footage shows Derek leaving the room carrying a folder he didn't have when he went in. I called Michael from Cleveland. He was alarmed. We need to investigate now. If he tried to coerce a terminally ill woman to alter legal documents, this is far more serious. Get back to New York. Monday morning, we sat with Ada Nolan and laid it all out. He immediately moved to secure hospital footage and interview staff on those shifts. 3 days later, he called us in. Gentlemen, we confirmed Derek Sanders used falsified documents to access the room multiple times. More serious, we recovered from his apartment a copy of Emily's original will with handwritten modifications, adding him as a 40% beneficiary, dated March 19th, the same night he visited. You're saying he tried to falsify Emily's will? I asked, shaking with anger. Exactly, Nolan said. He brought forged papers into her room and tried to force her to sign. According to the nurse's statement, Emily refused and threatened to report him. That explains her state that night. Michael added, That's coercion of a vulnerable adult. attempted forgery, and possibly worse if it contributed to her decline. Correct, Nolan said. We're adding those charges. He's now looking at up to 25 years. The folder Derek carried that night contained more. Durable power of attorney documents that, if signed, would give him total control over Emily's assets should she survive incapacitated. Nolan explained, he had a plan B. If she didn't die right away, he'd try to have her declared incompetent and take over the fortune as her caretaker. He designed it to steal the $29 million whether she lived or died. The realization gutted me. I had thought Derek was a scavenger arriving after Emily's death. He was worse. He'd stalked her during her last days, trying to exploit her at her most vulnerable. There's one more thing, Nolan said. We found evidence Derek was getting illegal updates on Emily's condition from contacts inside the hospital. He planned visits for when she was weakest. Leaving the DA's office, Michael put a hand on my shoulder. Robert, this is painful, but remember, Emily fought to the end to protect you and her legacy. Even in her last days, she stood up to him. That night, alone in my house, I reread Emily's letters from her illness. In one dated March 20th, 2 days before she died, there was a line that now rang like a bell. Dad, if anything happens to me, make sure my will is respected. Don't let anyone twist what we built together. She knew exactly what Derek was trying, and she fought him to her last breath. Her strength not only preserved our family, it revealed the true nature of a man who built his life on others' pain. On July 15th, 2024, nearly 4 months after the funeral, Derek's criminal trial began in New York Supreme Court, criminal term. The courtroom was packed with reporters, Derek's victims, and curious onlookers. Derek was brought in handcuffed by NYPD officers. The well-groomed, arrogant man from the funeral looked gaunt and defeated after months in custody. Judge Mary Jo Harrison, a veteran of organized crime cases, read the 14 counts: grand larceny in the second degree, forgery, threats and coercion, extortion, witness bribery, unauthorized practice, violation of court orders, and more. Ada Nolan opened with a careful chronology of Derek's crimes over a decade. Your Honor, the defendant is not a man who made one bad choice. He is a systematic predator who built his adult life on exploiting vulnerable people. For 3 hours, he called victims, 12 in total. Each story followed the same grim pattern: seduction, manipulation, extraction, threats. Rose Fletcher testified, steady and brave. He stole $35,000 using information he got from me during our relationship. When I tried to get it back, he threatened my career and said he had private photos. Anthony Rogers described the fake investment firm. He stole my life savings, $80,000 for retirement. When I discovered the fraud, he blackmailed me with pictures. The most powerful testimony came from a nurse, Meredith Logan, who'd attended Emily those last days. She testified about the illegal visits and Derek's attempt to force a signature. He presented falsified documents, identified himself as her husband. After his March 19th visit, Ms. Miller was extremely agitated. She told me, "Don't let him come back and try to make me sign anything." Then came the hospital security footage of Derek leaving with the folder he hadn't brought in, and the forged will and power of attorney documents recovered from his apartment. Your Honor, Nolan said, the defendant didn't merely try to take an inheritance he wasn't entitled to. He harassed a dying woman in her final days, seeking to steal $29 million. The defense, new counsel since Vance withdrew, tried to blame a gambling addiction. My client is a sick man who needs treatment, not prison. But the DA's evidence showed meticulous planning, files on victims, financial records, tailored strategies. An addict doesn't keep decade-long dossiers on victims or set up shell corporations, Nolan replied. This is a professional criminal. The most emotional moment came when the court allowed me to read a victim impact statement as Emily's father. My voice shook but held. Your Honor, Derek Sanders didn't only try to steal what my daughter earned, he desecrated her memory, tormented her final days, and turned our family's grief into a legal nightmare. Emily fought cancer with incredible courage, but she also had to fight this predator when she was most vulnerable. After 2 days of testimony and exhibits, Judge Harrison recessed for 2 hours, then returned with her verdict. After reviewing all evidence, this court finds the defendant, Derek Ryan Sanders, guilty on all counts. The sentence was clear: 18 years for the ongoing fraud and larcenies, 3 years for forgery, 2 years for threats and coercion, 2 years for witness bribery, 25 years total. Additionally, she said, the defendant will pay $847,000 in restitution to his victims and is permanently barred from any financial advisory or wealth management activity. Derek crumpled into his chair. As we left, the other victims gathered around me, grateful. Mr. Miller, Rose said, if you hadn't fought for Emily's memory, he'd still be out there. That night, over a quiet dinner at home, I thought back over the 4 months since Emily died. The legal war was over. Derek would be in prison for decades. Emily's estate was safe. More important, her name was cleared and her legacy protected. 6 months after Derek's trial, on January 15, 2025, I sat in Emily's old office surrounded by architects, attorneys, and leaders from nonprofits. That day launched a new chapter in my daughter's legacy, one she dreamed of but never got to see. In the months since the conviction, I'd thought hard about what to do with the $29 million Emily left me. At 68, I don't need that kind of money to live comfortably. I knew Emily would want her fortune to do something bigger. In her personal letters I've read 1,000 times, she wrote often about helping women entrepreneurs who faced what she faced during her divorce. Dad, she wrote in one of her last letters, if anything happens to me, I'd like some of what I built to help women who are starting over after being abandoned. Inspired by that, I created the Emily Miller Foundation for Women Entrepreneurs. The foundation provides zero-interest loans, free legal counsel, and emotional support to women abandoned by spouses who want to start businesses. Patricia James, Emily's right hand, agreed to serve as executive director. Mr. Miller, she said, eyes bright, it would be an honor to continue Emily's work. She always wanted her success to help other women become financially independent. We headquartered the foundation in Emily's former office building. We set aside $15 million as an endowment to keep it running for decades. The remaining $14 million I kept as a family reserve and for my needs. At the opening, exactly 1 year after Emily's passing, many who'd been important in her life came. Ellen Martin gave a moving speech. Emily turned pain into strength and adversity into opportunity. When Derek abandoned her, she didn't stay broken. She built something so she would never depend on anyone again. This foundation is exactly what she would have wanted, turning her story into hope. Michael Carter spoke too. I've handled many estate disputes, but never a fight as noble as Robert's defense of his daughter's memory. Emily can rest in peace knowing her legacy was preserved and transformed into hope for others. The most meaningful moment came when Rose, now a volunteer counselor, read our first grant request. Mary Catherine Roberts, 34, mother of 2, abandoned by her husband after 12 years of marriage, requests a $25,000 loan to open a bakery in Savannah, Georgia, and support her family independently. It was exactly the kind of story Emily would have championed. In the months that followed, the foundation hit full stride. We received 50 to 100 applications monthly from across the United States. Our counseling team, including several of Derek's former victims who turned their pain into purpose, reviewed each case with the care Emily would have given her own ventures. In March 2025, a letter arrived that moved me deeply. It was from Mary Catherine Roberts, the first recipient, telling us her bakery was a resounding success and she had already hired 3 employees. "Mr. Miller," she wrote, "you didn't just help me financially. You gave me the confidence to believe in myself again. When my husband abandoned us, I thought my life was over. Now I know it was beginning. Every loaf I bake carries a little of the hope Emily passed to me." In April, Michael brought more news. Derek had appealed, but the New York Appellate Division affirmed the 25-year sentence. He'd started paying restitution from a prison carpentry job. "Robert," Michael said at one of our monthly check-ins, "he's out of appeals. He'll be nearly 70 when he gets out, without resources or reputation. Justice, finally and fully." Beyond Derek's punishment, what truly brings me peace is watching Emily's legacy grow. By the end of 2025, the foundation had helped more than 200 women start businesses, creating over 800 jobs nationwide. Patricia kept me updated with the metrics. "Mr. Miller, we have an 87% success rate among businesses we've funded. Emily didn't just build her own fortune, she's helping build hundreds of family fortunes." In December 2025, 2 years after Emily's death, I hosted a holiday dinner for everyone who'd been part of this extraordinary journey. Michael, Patricia, Ellen, Rose, Anthony, and many foundation beneficiaries. We celebrated not just the season, but the triumph of justice and solidarity over greed and cruelty. During dessert, I read aloud a paragraph from Emily's last letter to me. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. But know this. Everything I built was for our family's future and to help others facing what I faced. Don't let grief freeze you. Use what I left to build something beautiful that honors Mom's memory and mine." As laughter and stories of success filled my home, I looked at Emily's photo on the wall and knew she would be proud. Her death ended her personal story, but it began hundreds of stories of hope and resilience. Derek Sanders thought he could steal Emily's legacy with lies and manipulation. What he never understood was that her true legacy wasn't the $29 million. It was her unbreakable spirit, her generosity, and her gift for turning suffering into strength for herself, for me, and now for countless others.